Welcome in to another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today I'm looking at some Dynasty stashes turning toward 2025. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's go. So first player, Malik Washington, hadn't done much this year, but we know that the Dolphins and Odell Beckham Jr., who somehow is still being talked about this year, recently mutually parted ways, whatever that means. I think part of that is to give Washington more playing time. So Washington in 10 games has 10 catches, 54 yards, and 4 carries for 36 yards and a touchdown. Again, hasn't done much. He actually outproduced OBJ. Neither was really playing much. And Washington has flashed some effectiveness on returns. Now, why do I have Washington as a dynasty stash? Well, I do think he's going to get more playing time now, and he has a solid college profile. Washington has hovered around 40% of offensive snaps for the last few weeks, but now he's likely going to play more. OBJ was still taking some snaps, so I think Washington will get into that 50 to 60% range moving forward. Now, Washington was great in 2023 at Virginia. 110 catches, 1,426 yards, and 9 touchdowns. He did this in just 12 games. And unlike some of the other prospects, he was decent at Northwestern in 2021 and 2022. He wasn't a pure one-year wonder. Now, he was a later breakout, but I did like him in the draft process. I was actually kind of surprised that Washington fell to the 6th round and, behind some other wide receivers that I liked a lot less. I did like his fit in this offense. Realistically, is Malik Washington ever going to pass Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill? No. But if something ever happened to one of those players, do I think Malik Washington could have value in this Mike McDaniel offense? I do. So he's someone that I would stash on dynasty rosters moving forward. Next player, Michael Mayer. So Michael Mayer was a high-end tight end prospect in the 2023 draft class. Now, I think some people don't really remember that because it was a long time ago. But he's had such a rough run out to start his career. I mean, so many things have gone wrong. But we know that tight ends take a lot of time to develop. I mean, we see David Njoku breaking out really late in his career. Evan Engram breaking out and then disappearing for 5 years and then breaking out again. So we know that tight ends breaking out later is totally possible. Now, Mayer hasn't really done much this year. In 7 games, 15 catches, 110 yards on 23 targets. Now, the 23 targets is actually not bad, considering there's a lot of context here. So Mayer missed 6 games with a personal issue. We still don't know what that is. Never found out. I looked it up. I tried to find something on it. I never was really able to find out what that personal issue was. We know that Mayer's not playing a full snap share, obviously because of Brock Bowers being there. But Mayer's played 50% or more of the snaps in 5 of 7 games, despite Bowers being there. Now, this past week, I think is why we're talking about Mayer, right? I mean, it's 7 catches, 68 yards on 9 targets. Probably disappointed people who started Brock Bowers in week 14. And Mayer went to an 81% snap share. Basically, what happened is the Raiders went exclusively to 12 personnel because they were down to just Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker as playable wide receivers. Now, I think we have to remember just how strong of a prospect Mayer was out of Notre Dame. He was not just a mediocre prospect or an okay prospect. He was an elite prospect. He had over 800 yards and 7 touchdowns in both 2021 and 2022. They're rare numbers for a college tight end. At the end of the day, most of the time, most college tight ends are projections. They are players who did not actually produce in college, not at a statistically significant level. Mayer was one of the best tight end prospects in the last 5 years. Of course, Brock Bowers was the best. So it just sucks that this happened. Mayer was drafted by an old regime. That regime was sent out of town, and the new regime had no loyalty to him. So, Mayer's just 23 years old. He turns 24 in July 2025. Now, Mayer has 2 years left on his rookie deal. I don't like to project trades, but we know that Mayer is not a part of the Raiders' long-term plans. That's beyond obvious. And if they fix their wide receiver core, his playing time will drop. So don't hear what I'm not saying. Mayer's never going to be startable as long as Brock Bowers exists. Never. You're never going to be able to start Michael Mayer. But we know that Mayer is a good tight end, and other teams may be interested in trading for him, especially as his contract runs down or signing him as a free agent. He'll still just be 25, 26 when he hits free agency. So he's a player that probably is going to be one of those perma stashes in Dynasty. Never going to really be able to cut him. And we hope that he gets into a better situation later. Next player, Jaleel McLaughlin. And I know we're tired of talking about the Broncos backfield, but McLaughlin, the roulette wheel landed on him last week, and he's fighting for a role in 2025. In 13 games, 80 carries, 367 yards, touchdown, 4.6 yards carry, 17 catches for 47 yards, and 2 touchdowns. There's nothing here is that great. I mean, the receiving touchdowns are nice. Yards per carry isn't bad. Been a lot more efficient than Javonte Williams. Just not that much work. He really hasn't, nothing has changed from last year. The receiving efficiency is not nearly as good. But at the end of the day, last week, he was involved. And again, the Broncos depth chart, we know Javonte Williams is a free agent heading into 2025. Between McLaughlin and Audric Estime, over the last few weeks, it's looked like the Broncos are leaning on Jaleel McLaughlin, not Audric Estime, as the backup to Javonte Williams, maybe the starter. I don't even know. But what will happen is that Javonte Williams is going to walk in free agency. They're probably going to bring in someone else to be the starter. But Jaleel McLaughlin is going to be someone who's going to hang around. And we know that these running backs with value who are in the potential backup spot on the depth chart are players you should stash. We don't know what McLaughlin's going to show the rest of the season. Maybe it'll be something good, raise his value a little bit more, stake a better claim to that RB2 job. And I just think that this is a player you should stash and hope that he gets more opportunity or starts to lock down a bigger share of that backfield. I like the matchup this week against the Colts, if that helps. Now, if you like my YouTube content, you should sign up for the Patreon. Right now, I'm offering a 25% discount for everybody. But if you're watching the YouTube channel and use the code TylerYT, you can actually get a 50% discount instead of just 25. So that's only publicized on the YouTube. So hopefully you enjoy that. Now, you get my rankings, access to Discord, and ability to ask in advance questions for YouTube videos. And tiers normally begin at $6 a month, but with that 50% discount, down to $3 a month. If you want to know more about Patreon, check out my Why You Should Join the Patreon videos on the channel. And I do appreciate everyone who joins. I really hope that more people join. It's always the roughest time of the year. I always wonder, honestly, even though it's fantasy playoffs, no one ever joins this time of year. It makes doing content hard because I know people really want the content, but nobody new ever joins during fantasy playoffs. So it's tough. But if you're interested, I do have that discount. Again, 50% off using the code TylerYT. So I hope to see more people join. With that said, we'll jump into my next player. So next on the list, Luke McCaffrey. And he hasn't done what we've wanted this year, but he might get some more opportunity now. And in 13 games, 16 catches, 155 yards, 20 targets. The main problem has been the lack of playing time. Honestly, it's very strange. McCaffrey, as a third-round rookie, was more involved early on, but his snap share has declined as the season has gone on. Noah Brown became the clear wide receiver 2. And I think a lot of it is that they just stopped using 11 personnel entirely. They went to a lot of 12 personnel. We've seen time for Ben Sinnott and John Bates alongside Zach Ertz, none of whom have gotten hurt for extended period of time. So that's kind of increased the tight end play, which has taken slot receivers like Luke McCaffrey off the field. Now, why do I think this is an opportunity? Well, we know that Noah Brown just got hurt, and I did like McCaffrey's profile coming into the NFL. So Brown is going to miss the rest of the year with kidney internal injury type issue. So there is a target vacuum if they choose to play their offense a little bit differently or get Luke McCaffrey more highlighted. McCaffrey was a good player. 71 catches, 992 yards, and 13 catches in the final season at Rice. He also had some dual threat usage as a rusher, but I don't think we've seen that because Austin Eckler was there to play that hybrid rusher receiver role. So there's really no need for McCaffrey. But I will say there is more to Luke McCaffrey than just being a McCaffrey. Now, is that why he went in the third round? Yeah, probably. I didn't see him as a third round pick. Would I have been fine taking him in the fourth or fifth? Yes. I didn't dislike him. But the regime took him. This new regime, the Jaden Daniels, Dan Quinn regime, took him in the third round. They obviously had plans for him. So I do think this is someone maybe toward 2025 we get more, especially if we flash down the stretch and the Commanders make the playoffs. McCaffrey does something during that part of the season. He's a player who could be more involved next year than he was this year, but he'll probably have to show something down the stretch to do so. Last player, Stone Smartt. Now, Stone Smartt was a player I'd heard of, but maybe you hadn't heard of or hadn't been talked about because he hadn't been relevant before this week. For the year, 6 catches, 98 yards, 8 targets. He's done nothing, but most of it came in week 14 after Will Disley's injury. We know Hayden Hurst is already out for the year. So Smartt led the tight ends after that. And pretty simply, why is Stone Smartt a Dynasty Stashers opportunity? He had 3 catches for 54 yards after Will Disley went out. We know random tight ends emerge all the time. We know that Will Disley and Hayden Hurst are both free agents. They were both on 1-year deals. Now, have the Chargers been linked to tight ends in the NFL draft? Yes. Am I relying on Stone Smartt to do anything major? No. But once again, the Chargers are a playoff team. Could Stone Smartt show something down the stretch to make him either valuable to the Chargers or valuable to someone else? At the very least, again, are you relying on Stone Smartt? No. Could you maybe get a 3rd-round pick for him later if he flashes? Yes. Would I sell him for a 3rd-round pick? Yes. He's already 26. It's not the kind of player we're looking into. But again, these stashes, and I'll conclude the stash part of the video with this. We're often looking for flip value more than we're looking for playing value. We flip them into draft picks. We turn waiver money into draft picks, and then we have more assets than our opponents, which gives us an edge moving forward. Now, I have one piece of NFL news. So Evan Engram had this kind of escalated quickly. Doug Peterson had said he would play, and now it's a season-ending torn labrum. Now, for me, I'm not saying that Engram's career is over. He saw some guaranteed money left for next year. I do think he will be back. I do think he will be the Jaguars starting tight end next year. But I think this injury represents the end of Engram as a valuable dynasty asset. We've seen that chasing tight end is not the way to go. Engram is not going to hold value in dynasty leagues. He's just going to be a guy you can put in your lineup, but there's no dynasty value anymore. Now, in 9 games, 47 catches, 365 yards, touchdown, 64 targets, 5.2 catches, which is actually pretty good, and 40.6 yards a game. But so much of this came in that one 10-catch, 102-yard game. One big game. He didn't go over 50 yards in any other game. So he's really playable once, and that's not good enough. Engram's going to turn 31 years old before the 2025 season begins. Now, you know, if I could trade a late 3rd-round pick for the rest of Engram's career, I mean, that might not be a terrible idea. We've seen that Hunter Henry, someone who was not worth anything, has actually had fantasy value this season. But we're done with Evan Engram being a higher-end dynasty asset. That phase of his career is over. We're not going back there. Now, as for stashing Brenton Strange, the backup, he didn't impress me when Engram was out the last time this year. He hasn't done much. Yes, stash him. No, I'm not excited for him. No, I'm not paying a pick for him. But yes, he should be stashed in most leagues. Now, I've got a couple of Patreon questions. We'll jump into it. Are there any high-end to elite quarterbacks who consider trading this offseason that have underperformed in 2024 and will continue to underperform in 2025? So for me, the big one is Patrick Mahomes. I think Mahomes, to some, still carries the name value of a top 3 dynasty quarterback. I don't think we're going back there. I don't think that Mahomes, who's about to turn 30, the rushing output has been down this year. Are we going to get back to Patrick Mahomes as a top 3 dynasty quarterback when there are other guys who run the ball and which just gives you a safer floor and a higher ceiling? I don't think we're getting back to Patrick Mahomes being a top 3 dynasty quarterback. I'm not saying he's going to be worthless. I still have Patrick Mahomes as a 1st-round Superflex startup pick. But to me, I think he's the one that I would pick out that might be overvalued. Outside of Mahomes, I actually think most of the other top quarterbacks are undervalued in Superflex, not overvalued. So I don't know if there's a lot of moves I would be making. I actually would be more looking to buy into some of these quarterbacks at a lower price than I would be to trade them away. Now, what's been the biggest surprise for you this year for fantasy, as well as real life NFL? Well, for fantasy, I mean, it's the running back and wide receiver dichotomy. Every running back staying healthy and producing, and wide receiver production being way down. We've been moving toward more committees and more productive wide receivers, but that was all wiped out in 2024. Last year, we had 12 players over 1,200 receiving yards. We're not going to be anywhere near that this year. This year, so last year we had 11 players average more than 80 receiving yards a game. 11. This year, we have 6 above 75. Above 75, not even 80. I had to lower it, and there's still just 6 above 75. And 3 of those players, Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, and Chris Godwin, have missed a lot of time. One of them's out for the year. The other 2 have been absent for many games. So this was not the year to take wide receivers early. Jamar Chase was great. Justin Jefferson was pretty good. But otherwise, I'm not sure it really paid off for you in the early rounds to a big degree. I will say, though, the trend line of wide receiver production was very consistent up until this year. So I'm looking at this year as mostly an outlier. I don't see it as representative of the future. And I can tell you that I'm going to be in on wide receivers and completely out on running backs because people are going to overreact during 2025. Real life surprise? This Vikings and Steelers being good. I just did not see that either of these 2 teams would be able to overcome what I thought was not a good quarterback situation. The Steelers, I guess Mike Tomlin is just the best coach ever. Seems possible. If he's as good as he is with this team, that's wild to me. And then the Vikings, I thought the Vikings had a pretty weak roster, but somehow they've gotten a lot out of it, both from the defense. I think the defense has been a lot better than I expected. And then they've gotten a lot out of Sam Darnold, which I didn't think was very likely. So that's my biggest real life surprise. Now, if you liked the video, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. As always, the best way to support the channel is to subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. If you want my best fantasy football advice available on the Patreon, Dynasty, and Start Sit and Redraft. And you can get that 50% discount at all tiers using the code TylerYT. Right up there, patreon.com/fantasy advice. Click that link and get that 50% discount. Every sign up helps support my independent content like the YouTube channel. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.